Well, one is that um, overdose being kind of the biggest deterrent to addiction is just it's categorically false. So when you're that far into the throes of addiction, especially on stuff like heroin or what have you, uh, overdose becomes a problem the more and more you do it, because you get stronger and you need more to get that rush.
Mhm.
And by the time you're at that point, I there's not a lot of people who struggle with addiction on drugs that you can overdose on that are actually that worried about their lives. And even when they start to get on it, the more and more they do, the less kind of worried they become, because this is more on the psychological side, and they just become shells of themselves. They live for that next high, but when they're sober, life becomes unbearable. Um, and that's because sometimes that homeostasis, as you were talking about, so if the dopamine opioid deficiency is here,
Mhm.
and that that moving towards homeostasis, the drug is here, and it goes like this. Sometimes it can actually invert and loop, and so when you come back down, that deficiency is worse than it initially was. And so, like, and the more you do, the more doses you do, the higher the dose, etc. When the higher you get, the further you fall as
Mhm.
well, and it just becomes more and more, more and more and more and more painful. And so these people are really, sadly, they don't actually care if they live or die, and that is a lot of because how bad the drug makes you feel on the come down, but as much as well as how society treats these people too, just like they're invisible, they're hungry ghosts, as Mate kind of insinuated there. But as well, for that tax dollar question, why would I want to throw my tax dollars at that is uh, just fiscally, it makes more sense as well than jail. Like it's just the data's there. It's that simple. You'll just save a lot of money, man. If you don't feel like being empathetic, you will just save yourself some money.
Right. It would be the proper
But
thing to do for a narcissistic person that wants the best for themselves is to actually just accept this and buy into that idea. And something that comes to me now with the analogy of the low dopamine, high cortisol is that it's not that you never want cortisol
yeah,
because you want a relationship between the dopamine. So you want something to I think it's a push and pull relationship where the cortisol is pushing you. So if you're stressed, it means that you should be doing something. And if you're motivated, it means that you want to be doing that thing. So there's a relationship between the two where they're inverting between one another, and you're motivated and then you're stressed. You feel the need to do something, but it's not a detrimental stress to your life until that dopamine dissipates and the cortisol increases. And so that's when so the technical term for that is allostatic load, when
yeah,
you have an overactive HPA axis. So, and that leads to a ton of different things like cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure and all of these other things. I would liken it to cortisol being an acid that runs through your body constantly and breaks down tissues that end up having long-term implications.
yeah, yeah. It's on top of that too. It actually can cause mental illness. Kind of back to that epigenetic stuff you were talking about. The more stressed you are, it's kind of like the mutant gene in X-Men, I guess. The more stressed you are, it's crushing the crushing weight of the world and stuff. If there is a gene that hasn't been activated for mental health that you have been born with, suddenly it flicks on, and now you're not just stressed. Now you have like bipolar, for instance, or you're not just stressed anymore. Now you're schizophrenic on top of that,
Mm-hmm.
or you're not just stressed anymore. You have anorexia, and so yeah, it's a complex interplay as well as the dopamine and limbic system. You were right; they do work kind of in opposite of each other. So when one's not going, the other one is. There's never nothing going on.
Mhm.
And so, but with that hyperactive HPA, then it's just going all the time, and no dopamine is ever getting in there. But yeah, that's correct. Yeah.